one of the foremost female singers of her generation and a human fireball of sex, drugs and rock and roll, she crammed a lot of wild living into her short 27 years. But she was also a sensitive, old-fashioned romantic and voracious reader, a swashbuckling, pleasure-seeking, polyamorous trailblazer who left behind a slender musical legacy but remains enduring in the 50 years since her demise. Today's hell-raising history maker is singing icon Janis Joplin. Born in Port Arthur, Texas in 1943, raised in middle-class comfort by a depressive father and a straight-laced religious mother, Joplin was a misfit in her conservative hometown. Joplin stated that she was ostracised and bullied in high school. As a teen, she became overweight and suffered from acne and was cruelly mocked by classmates who despised her tomboy looks, bohemian aspirations, and love of black music. She had heard the blues at an early age and befriended a group of outcasts and begun singing blues and folk music. Upon graduating high school in 1960, she attended the University of Texas at Austin, which had a music scene she would love, and while there, she performed with a folk trio called the Waller Creek Boys. It was here that she knew her destiny lay in a music career. Joplin cultivated a rebellious manner and styled herself partly after her female blues heroines and partly after the beat poets. In 1963, she left Texas with friend Chet Helms and hitchhiked to North Beach, San Francisco. Chet would found the band Big Brother and the Holding Company, which Joplin would become lead singer of. Chet is often called the father of San Francisco's 1967 Summer of Love. He was a music promoter and a counterculture figure in San Francisco during its hippie period in the mid to late 60s. In 1963, Joplin was arrested in San Francisco for shoplifting. During the 2 years that followed, her drug use increased and she acquired a reputation as a speed freak and occasional heroin user. While by 1965, Joplin's friends in San Francisco, noticing the detrimental effects on her from regularly injecting methamphetamine and describing her as skeletal and emaciated, persuaded her to return to Port Arthur. Joplin would later tell Rolling Stone magazine about her first stint in San Francisco. "I didn't have many friends, and I didn't like the ones I had." By 1966, Joplin's bluesy vocal style attracted the attention of San Francisco-based psychedelic rock band Big Brother and the Holding Company, which had gained some renown amongst the nascent hippie community in San Francisco's Haight-Ashbury. The band recorded their debut album in 1967, the eponymously named Big Brother and the Holding Company, shortly after the group's breakthrough appearance in that June at the Monterey Pop Festival. The album was a minor success. It was only 23 minutes long and it peaked at number 60 in the Billboard album chart and almost produced a top 40 hit with the song Down on Me. This debut album spawned another 4 minor hits, on all of which Joplin sang lead vocals, and the band would shortly come to be billed as, quote, Janis Joplin and Big Brother and the Holding Company. while the media coverage given to Joplin generated resentment within the band. Time magazine called Joplin, quote, probably the most powerful singer to emerge from the white rock movement, while the May 1968 issue of Vogue magazine stated that Joplin was, quote, the most staggering leading woman in rock. Joplin played a major role in the arrangement and production of the songs that would comprise Big Brother and the Holding Company's second album, Cheap Thrills. Producer John Simon tried recording the band in concert to capture their energy in a live album, but several attempts showed the band was prone to mistakes. Their imprecision was not helped by moving the sessions to a recording studio. Joplin sang take after take of the same song, with her performances consistently good, and she grew frustrated with the band's sloppiness. Simon was replaced by Elliot Mazer, who fixed the songs by overdubbing certain parts. The album featured a cover design by counterculture cartoonist Robert Crumb. Although Cheap Thrills sounded as if it consisted of concert recordings, only the track Ball and Chain was actually recorded in front of a paying audience. The album had a raw quality, including the sound of a drinking grass breaking and the broken shards being swept away during the song Turtle Blues. Cheap Thrills produced very popular hits with Piece of My Heart and Summertime, together with the premiere of the documentary film Monterey Pop at New York's Lincoln Center for the Performing Arts on December 26, 1968. The album launched Joplin as a star. It reached number one on the Billboard 200 album chart 8 weeks after its release, and was number one for 8 weeks, and sold over 1 million copies in the first month of its release. By early 1969, she had split from Big Brother and the Holding Company. Joplin formed a new backup group, the Cosmic Blues Band, but her drug use intensified and she was using vast quantities of heroin on a daily basis. The Cosmic Blues album, released in September 1969, achieved gold certification but didn't reach the same success as Cheap Thrills. Reviews for the new band were mixed. Joplin performed at Woodstock, but her nerves and a long delay affected her performance. Despite this, she engaged with the crowd and sang an encore. Pete Townshend from The Who acknowledged her talent even on an off night. In February 1970, Joplin travelled to Brazil with her friend, where she temporarily quit drugs and alcohol. There, she met David Neuhaus, an American traveller. They spent time together, and Joplin spoke positively about him. Upon returning to the US, however, Joplin resumed using heroin, which led to the end of her relationship with Neuhaus. She also struggled with her ongoing romantic involvement with Peggy Caserta, who was also battling addiction. Joplin formed a new band named the Full Tilt Boogie Band. She was more actively involved in its formation. The band received positive feedback from fans and critics alike. In late August, September, and early October 1970, Joplin rehearsed and recorded her album Pearl in Los Angeles. During this time, she was engaged to Seth Morgan, a student and future novelist. However, her drug use persisted. On October the 1st, 1970, Joplin completed her final recording of the song Mercedes-Benz. At some point on Saturday, 3rd of October, she learned by telephone to her dismay that Seth Morgan had been involved with other women. People at Sunset Sound Recorders overheard Joplin expressing anger about the state of her relationship with Morgan, as well as joy about the progress of the sessions. On Sunday evening, October the 4th, 1970, Joplin was found dead on the floor of her room at the Landmark Motor Hotel. Cause of death likely being a heroin overdose. She was just 27 years old. Her final album, Pearl, was released posthumously on January the 11th, 1971. It would go on to sell many millions of copies and has been ranked at just over 100 in the Rolling Stone greatest albums of all time. Joplin certainly took her own permissive advice in sexual matters. She was proudly promiscuous with both men and women, her lovers crossing race and gender lines at a time in American history when such libertine behaviour was not just bold, but dangerous. As the singer once explained, "I'm not queer, but I'm not adverse." She also claimed to have dabbled in prostitution, mainly when she ran out of cash during her youthful beatnik travels. One of her male conquests recalls her, quote, refusal of guilt and shame about F***ing. With admiration, in other words, Joplin conducted her sex life like a classic male rock star. Morrison was another of Joplin's conquests. Undeterred by their first stormy encounter, the Doors singer pursued her at a boozy party. She spurned him by smashing a whiskey bottle over his head, after which he was even more smitten. Joplin complained that Leonard Cohen and Morrison were cold fish in the bedroom. Quote, "They both gave me nothing." A gossipy snippet is about a young Bruce Springsteen hiding from Joplin to escape her demands. Surely one of her rare sexual failures. There is another quote from Joplin saying, and I quote, "I hear a rumour that somebody in San Francisco is spreading stories that I am a dyke. You go back there and find out who it is and tell them that Janet says she's gotten it on with a couple of thousand cats in her life and a few hundred chicks, and see what they can do with that." Alluring, coarse-grained voice crackled with bawdy desire and wounded rage on her deliciously ragged reworkings of jukebox standards such as "Piece of My Heart," as well as her self-penned blues classics Mercedes-Benz and Move Over. However, her riotous life was also full of bitter, sweet moments. Joplin was America's first female rock star who spoke most directly to young women, emboldening them and absolving them from shame. And as such, she is truly a history maker